The ordinary life. You begin exactly like everyone else. You wake up, go to school or work, spend time with friends, laugh at small jokes, and dream about the future. Nothing about you suggests that one day people could fear your name. In fact, if someone told you that you would become a villain, you would probably laugh. At this stage, your greatest goals are simple. You want to be accepted. You want people to respect you. You want to find your place in the world and build a life you can be proud of. These are ordinary dreams shared by millions of people every day. As time passes, every experience begins shaping who you become. Every compliment gives you confidence. Every failure teaches you something new. Every friendship changes the way you see people, even if you don't notice it yet. Most of these moments seem too small to matter. A conversation lasts only a few minutes. A rejection lasts only a few seconds. An insult may sound harmless to everyone else. Yet some memories stay with you for years, quietly changing the way you think without anyone realizing it. You continue moving forward, believing your story will have a happy ending. The people around you see an ordinary person living an ordinary life. They cannot see the invisible lessons you are collecting every single day. The truth is, villains are rarely born. They are shaped. Long before anyone fears them, they are simply people trying to understand a complicated world. They care about family. They make mistakes. They hope tomorrow will be better than today. Right now, you still believe you are the hero of your own story. And that belief is completely genuine. Every choice you make feels reasonable from your point of view, even when those choices eventually begin leading somewhere much darker. For now, there is no anger. No revenge. No desire for power. Only possibility. The journey toward becoming a villain hasn't begun yet. But the first crack is closer than you think. The first wound. Then something changes. Not all at once, and not in a way that anyone else immediately notices. Life simply stops feeling as fair as it once did. The world gives you your first real wound, and unlike a cut on your skin, this one cannot be seen. Maybe someone betrays your trust. Maybe the people you believed would always stand beside you walk away. Perhaps you lose someone you love, or you work harder than everyone else only to watch someone less deserving receive the reward. Whatever it is, something inside you begins to change. At first, you tell yourself it's just bad luck. You try to move on. You smile when people expect you to smile. You convince yourself that tomorrow will be different. But the memory refuses to disappear. Instead, it quietly follows you wherever you go. Then it happens again. Another disappointment. Another betrayal. Another reminder that life doesn't always reward kindness or honesty. Slowly, you begin questioning everything you once believed. You start wondering why good people suffer while selfish people seem to succeed. You notice that power often speaks louder than kindness, and that respect is sometimes given to those who demand it rather than those who earn it. The people around you don't notice the difference. You still laugh. You still go about your daily life. But behind every smile, a question has started growing. Why me? The more that question goes unanswered, the louder it becomes. Eventually, you stop expecting people to understand you. Instead of talking about your pain, you hide it. You tell yourself that no one would understand anyway. That's when loneliness becomes dangerous. Because when you're alone with your thoughts, you become the only voice you can hear. Every painful memory plays over and over again. Every unfair moment feels bigger than it really was. Every betrayal becomes proof that the world cannot be trusted. Without realizing it, you begin changing. Not on the outside. On the inside. The kindness that once came naturally now feels more difficult. Trust becomes harder to give. Forgiveness starts feeling like weakness. The wound hasn't made you a villain. Not yet. But it has planted the first seed. And every villain remembers the moment they stopped believing the world would ever be fair again. The breaking point. For a while, you managed to keep everything under control. You tell yourself you're stronger than your anger. You bury your disappointment beneath routines, responsibilities, and distractions. From the outside, nothing seems different. People still see the same person they've always known. But pressure has a limit. Every disappointment adds another weight to your shoulders. Every betrayal becomes another crack beneath your feet. Every silent night gives your thoughts more room to grow. Then one day, something finally pushes you too far. It doesn't have to be the biggest tragedy you've ever faced. Sometimes it's surprisingly small. One more lie. One more humiliation. One more person choosing someone else over you. On its own, it means very little. But to you, it's the final piece. The moment everything you've been carrying crashes down at once. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" Instead, you ask a far more dangerous question. Why should I keep playing by the rules? That question changes everything. For the first time, you begin looking at the world differently. You notice that some people succeed by manipulating others. Some gain power through fear. Some lie, cheat, or betray and still walk away with everything they wanted. Before, you judged those people. Now, you begin to understand them. Not because you've become evil overnight, but because their actions suddenly make sense. Your beliefs begin shifting, one small step at a time. You tell yourself that maybe kindness isn't enough. Maybe honesty only makes people vulnerable. Maybe the people who refuse to fight back are the ones who get hurt the most. You don't realize it yet, but you're no longer searching for what's right. You're searching for what works. The person you were yesterday would never agree with these thoughts. But today's version of you is tired. Tired of losing. Tired of trusting. Tired of believing that doing the right thing will somehow make everything better. Deep inside, something quietly breaks. No one else hears it. No one else sees it. But from this moment forward, you are no longer becoming the person you wanted to be. You're becoming the person you believe the world deserves. The first bad decision. The next step doesn't feel evil. In fact, it feels completely reasonable. After everything you've been through, you convince yourself that you've earned the right to make one selfish choice. Just one. Nothing too serious. Nothing that makes you a bad person. At least, that's what you tell yourself. So you cross a line. Maybe you lie because the truth no longer seems worth protecting. Maybe you manipulate someone because you believe they'll never notice. Maybe you take something that isn't yours because, in your mind, the world has already taken enough from you. For a moment, nothing happens. There is no lightning strike. No voice telling you to stop. No instant punishment waiting around the corner. Instead, life continues. And that surprises you. You expected guilt to overwhelm you. You expected regret to keep you awake at night. But it doesn't. The feeling passes much faster than you imagined. That's when something dangerous happens. Your mind begins to rewrite the story. You don't call it stealing. You call it taking back what you deserve. You don't call it manipulation. You call it protecting yourself. You don't call it betrayal. You call it survival. The words change. And soon, so does your conscience. The line that once seemed impossible to cross no longer feels important. In fact, it starts to disappear. What shocked you yesterday becomes normal today. What felt wrong yesterday feels necessary today. You haven't become a villain because of one decision. You've become someone who now believes bad decisions can be justified. And once you justify the first one, the second becomes easier. Then the third. Then the fourth. Before long, you stop noticing the line at all. Because the most dangerous step toward becoming a villain isn't the worst thing you ever do. It's the first thing you convince yourself was acceptable. The justification. By now, something inside you has changed. Not because you've become cruel, but because you've become convincing. Every decision that once felt wrong now comes with an explanation. You no longer ask yourself whether it's right or wrong. You ask whether it's necessary. And in your mind, the answer is always yes. You tell yourself that the world created this version of you. If people had treated you differently, you wouldn't have changed. If life had been fair, you wouldn't have crossed that line. So you stop blaming yourself. Instead, you blame everyone else. The people who ignored you. The people who betrayed you. The people who looked the other way when you needed them most. Little by little, responsibility shifts away from you. You become the victim. Everyone else becomes the reason. That's when your actions begin feeling less like choices and more like justice. Hurting someone no longer feels cruel. It feels deserved. Lying no longer feels dishonest. It feels strategic. Manipulating people no longer feels immoral. It feels intelligent. The more you repeat these ideas, the more believable they become. Your mind is no longer protecting the truth. It's protecting your identity. Because admitting you were wrong would mean accepting that you've become the very thing you once hated. And that's a truth you're not ready to face. So instead, you build a new version of reality. One where every decision makes sense. One where every enemy deserves what happens to them. One where every sacrifice is worth the outcome. To everyone else, your behavior is becoming darker. But from your perspective, you're finally doing what should have been done all along. That's the frightening part. Very few villains believe they're evil. Most believe they're right. And once you truly believe you're the hero, there's almost nothing you won't justify. The taste of power. Then it happens. For the first time, your new way of thinking actually works. The lie gets you what you wanted. The manipulation gives you control. The fear you create makes people listen. Suddenly, the world begins responding differently. Doors that once stayed closed begin to open. People who ignored you now pay attention. Those who once looked down on you become careful with their words. For the first time in a long time, you don't feel powerless anymore. And that feeling is addictive. You tell yourself it's only temporary. Just enough to make sure no one can ever hurt you again. But power has a strange way of changing people. The more you have, the less you want to lose it. Soon, protecting yourself is no longer enough. Now you want influence. You want control. You want people to think twice before standing against you. Every success convinces you that your choices were correct. If your actions were truly wrong, then why are they working? That question slowly replaces your conscience. The person you used to be grows quieter with every victory. The voice telling you to stop becomes harder to hear. Not because it disappeared, but because the sound of success is much louder. Before long, you stop using power as a shield. You begin using it as a weapon. You don't threaten people because you have to. You threaten them because you know it works. You don't manipulate because you're desperate. You manipulate because it's easier than earning trust. Without realizing it, you've crossed another invisible line. You no longer seek power to protect your life. You seek power because you've discovered how good it feels to have it. And once someone learns what power feels like, walking away from it becomes one of the hardest decisions they'll ever make. Losing empathy. At first, you still feel guilty. Every person you hurt stays in your thoughts. Every lie echoes in your mind. Every betrayal leaves behind a small sense of regret. But guilt is a feeling that fades when it's ignored long enough. The more often you silence your conscience, the quieter it becomes. Eventually, you stop hearing it altogether. People slowly change in your eyes. They are no longer individuals with dreams, fears, and families. They become obstacles, pieces on a board, tools to be used, or enemies to be removed. You stop asking, how will this affect them? Instead, you ask, how will this benefit me? That single change reshapes every decision you make. Compassion begins to look like weakness. Mercy starts feeling like a mistake. Forgiveness seems like something only naive people believe in. You convince yourself that emotions only get in the way. So you bury them. Someone cries. You don't react. Someone begs. You don't hesitate. Someone suffers. You simply move on. Not because you enjoy their pain, but because you've taught yourself not to feel it. The people closest to you notice the difference. Your smile doesn't feel the same. Your words become colder. Your eyes seem empty, even when you're winning. Some try to reach out. Some remind you of the person you used to be. But instead of listening, you push them away. Because anyone who questions your path begins to feel like another obstacle. And obstacles are meant to be removed. The most dangerous part isn't that you've become cruel. It's that cruelty no longer feels cruel. It feels normal. By now, the person you once were still exists. But their voice has become so quiet. You can barely remember what it sounds like. Crossing the line. Until now. You could still turn back. Every mistake, every lie, every betrayal still had a path to redemption. All it would take was one honest decision. One apology. One moment of courage. But then, you make the choice that changes everything. The choice you can never take back. It isn't made out of anger. It isn't made by accident. It's made with complete certainty. For the first time, you knowingly sacrifice someone else for your own goal. You watch the consequences unfold. And instead of stopping, you continue. Because the mission has become more important than the people standing in its way. That's the moment the line disappears. Not because you couldn't see it, but because you chose to step over it. Afterward, something unexpected happens. You wait for regret. You expect to feel broken. You expect your conscience to fight back one last time. But it doesn't. Instead, you feel relief. The impossible decision is behind you. And now that you've survived it, the next impossible decision doesn't seem so impossible anymore. This is how people become capable of things they once swore they would never do. Not through one giant leap, but through countless small steps that slowly erase every limit they once believed in. From this moment forward, people begin telling stories about you. Some call you dangerous. Some call you a monster. Some call you evil. You hear every word. And for the first time, you stop caring. Because your greatest fear is no longer being hated. It's being stopped. You've crossed the line. And now, there is no road behind you. Only the one leading deeper into darkness. Becoming the villain. One day, you look into a mirror. For a brief moment, you barely recognize the person staring back at you. Not because your face has changed, but because your mind has. The dreams that once kept you awake at night have been replaced by something else. Control. Power. Victory. No matter the cost. The person who once wanted to make the world better now believes the world deserves whatever happens next. People no longer whisper your name with respect. They whisper it with fear. When you enter a room, conversations stop. When people hear you're coming, they change their plans. Some run. Some hide. Some prepare to fight. You've become the very thing that once frightened you. Ironically, you still don't see yourself as the villain. From your perspective, You're simply doing what no one else was willing to do. You tell yourself that history will understand you. That one day, people will realize your actions were necessary. That every sacrifice had a purpose. But history doesn't judge intentions. It judges consequences. The people you've hurt don't remember your reasons. They remember their pain. The lives you've destroyed don't disappear just because you believed it was justified. By now, the transformation is complete. Not because you've become unstoppable, but because you've become unrecognizable. The kind, hopeful person from the beginning of this story still exists, buried beneath years of anger, fear, pride, and choices. If someone from your past met you today, they wouldn't ask, "What happened to you?" They would ask, "Who are you?" And perhaps the most tragic part of all, you no longer know the answer yourself. Because somewhere along the journey, you stopped becoming the person you wanted to be, and became the villain in someone else's story. The legacy. Every story eventually reaches its end. The question is, what will people remember about you? Power doesn't last forever. Fear fades. Empires collapse. Even the greatest villains cannot outrun time. One day, your name becomes a story told by people who never met you. Some remember the destruction. Others remember the lives that were lost. A few try to understand why you became the person you did. They search for the moment everything changed. The betrayal. The heartbreak. The first bad decision. The choice you could never take back. Some will say you were born evil. But they would be wrong. You weren't born a villain. You became one. One decision at a time. Looking back, you realize there was never a single moment that defined your fate. It was the small choices. The lies you excused. The anger you refused to let go of. The power you couldn't walk away from. The empathy you slowly buried. Each step felt insignificant on its own. Together, they changed everything. And that's what makes this story so unsettling. Because it isn't just about one fictional villain. It's about human nature. Every person carries the ability to choose compassion, or revenge, forgiveness, or resentment, humility, or power. Every day, those choices quietly shape who we become. The path toward becoming a villain doesn't begin with a grand act of evil. It begins the moment you convince yourself that your next wrong decision doesn't really matter. Fortunately, the opposite is also true. Just as small choices can slowly lead someone into darkness, small acts of kindness, honesty, courage, and forgiveness can lead them back toward the light. In the end, the greatest villains are not remembered because they were powerful. They're remembered because they forgot the person they used to be. So before judging how someone became the villain, ask yourself one final question. If you had lived their life,